Max Baer Jr. came into the world on December 4, 1937, in Oakland, California, and from the start, his last name carried weight. His father was Max Baer Sr., the heavyweight champion who had already turned into a national story before his son could even speak. Just 3 years earlier, on June 14, 1934, Max Sr. fought the giant Italian champion Primo Carnera at Madison Square Garden Bowl in Long Island City, New York, and the fight was chaos in the best and worst way. Carnera hit the canvas again and again, a shocking 11 knockdowns, and by the 11th round, the referee stopped it to protect him. That win made Max Sr. the heavyweight champion of the world, and even though he lost the title 364 days later to James J. Braddock on June 13, 1935, the legend had already stuck. He finished with 71 wins and 13 losses, and 53 of those wins were knockouts. So when Max Jr. was born, he was not just a baby in Oakland, he was the son of a man people already talked about, like a movie character. Max Sr. had that rare mix of danger and charm that pulled crowds in. On his father's side there was German Jewish heritage, tied to the Alsace-Lorraine region, and Max Sr. himself was born on February 11, 1909 in Omaha, Nebraska. On his mother's side, Mary Ellen Sullivan brought Irish roots into the house. Max Sr. wore a Star of David on his trunks, especially in the build-up around his 1933 fight with Max Schmeling, a fighter tied to Nazi praise at the time, and the symbolism was hard to miss. So Max Jr. did not just inherit a famous name, he inherited a story people were already debating. That story got even bigger, because the talent did not stop with Max Sr. There was Buddy Baer too, Max Jr.'s uncle, born June 11, 1915, a heavyweight boxer with his own punch and his own spotlight. On May 23, 1941, Buddy fought Joe Louis for the heavyweight title at Griffith Stadium in Washington. In the first round, Buddy knocked Louis through the ropes and onto the ring apron, something that almost never happened to champions. But then the fight turned into controversy in the 6th round, when Louis knocked Buddy down after the bell had ended the round. His manager refused to leave the ring in protest. The referee disqualified Buddy, and the title was gone. Years later, in 2003, Buddy was named among the Ring magazine's 100 Greatest Punchers, and after boxing he moved into acting, appearing in 17 films and plenty of television in the 1950s. So Max Jr. grew up with boxing in one room and Hollywood in the next. Max Sr. had even crossed into film, landing the lead role in The Prizefighter and The Lady in 1933, acting alongside Myrna Loy and Primo Carnera. Then tragedy hit. On November 24, 1959, Max Sr. died of a massive heart attack in a Hollywood hotel at only 50 years old. Max Jr. was just 21 then, old enough to understand what was lost, and young enough to feel like the ground had been pulled out from under him. Instead of leaning into boxing, Max Jr. pushed himself into his own lane through sports first. At Christian Brothers High School in Sacramento, he earned letters in 4 different sports. He lived in Sacramento's Land Park neighborhood, and that steady environment helped him become more than a famous kid with a famous father. Then golf became the surprising proof that he was serious. He won the junior title at the Sacramento Open twice. In 1968, when he was 30 and already known to the public, he played in the Andy Williams San Diego Open Pro-Am with Charlie Sifford. Together they won the Pro-Am portion of the tournament, and that win made one thing clear. Max Jr. was not just showing up for a photo, he could actually play. Before Hollywood fully grabbed him, he served in the U.S. Air Force as a medical technician at Gunter Air Force Base in Alabama. That meant real training, real responsibility, and real consequences. After that he went to Santa Clara University and earned a bachelor's degree in business administration with a minor in philosophy in 1959, the same year his father died. Business and philosophy together make an interesting mix, and it is almost funny, in a painful way, that a man with that background would later be known for playing someone the world called simple. That step into acting arrived in 1960 in the most casual way. Max Jr. was at Warner Brothers having lunch when a studio executive noticed him and said he looked like James Garner, who had just left Maverick. The executive asked if he had ever thought about acting. They offered him $250 a week, which was serious money in 1960. And suddenly the path was not a dream, it was a contract. He signed a 1-year deal and started working fast. He began showing up on the very shows people watched every week. On Maverick, he played 3 different characters across 3 episodes. On 77 Sunset Strip, he popped up again. Between 1960 and 1961, he appeared on Cheyenne several times, playing characters such as Callow, Bert McGuire, and Pete. He appeared on Surfside 6, Hawaiian Eye, Bronco, and Sugarfoot in 1961. It was a lot, and it was not glamorous, but it was the kind of training that builds timing, focus, and toughness. He stood 6'4". He had the kind of face cameras liked, and his resemblance to James Garner was part of what opened the first door. But his last name was the louder thing, because everyone knew who Max Baer Sr. was. After his father died in late 1959, the shadow got heavier, because now it was not only legacy, it was memory. Then 1962 arrived, and with it the audition that turned into a story people still repeat. Max Jr. tested for the role of Jethro Bodine on the same day Irene Ryan tested for Granny at General Service Studios. He was nervous, and he ended up going with Irene to the Shack restaurant nearby during lunch, and she bought him martinis to calm him down. He was not much of a drinker, and the drinks hit him hard. When he returned for the screen test, he was supposed to walk into a cabin scene, but instead he bumped his shoulder right into the door jamb. In that moment, instead of recovering like a polished actor, he looked at the door jamb with a goofy grin and said, "'Excuse me," and the accident suddenly became the character. That stumble, and those martinis, helped lock him into a role that would make him famous. But fame has its own trap. The Beverly Hillbillies ran for 9 seasons and ended in 1971, and when it ended, Max Jr. found himself stuck. He had education, he had discipline, and he had proven he could work, but casting people kept seeing only Jethro. In interviews years later, he admitted that for a long time he could not even watch the show and did not want to talk about it. So he did what a stubborn person does when the front door closes. He built a new door. He wrote, produced, directed, and starred in a crime drama called Macon County Line in 1974, and he did it with an initial investment of about $225,000. Then the film shocked everyone. It became one of those rare money stories Hollywood loves, earning about $18.8 million in North America and reportedly more than $30 million worldwide. It proved he had skill beyond sitcom comedy. When the Beverly Hillbillies first hit CBS on September 26, 1962, nobody expected what came next. It did not just start strong, it caught fire fast, and within 6 weeks it climbed all the way to the top as the most watched show in America. In its first year it landed at number 1 with a massive Nielsen rating, and the second season went even higher. Then came a moment that people still point to when they talk about television history. On January 8, 1964, the episode called The Giant Jackrabbit aired, and it drew around 23 million households, which meant roughly 50 million people. Max Baer Jr. became Jethro, and almost overnight his face was everywhere. The funny part is that the role people thought was simple was the opposite for him. Off-camera, Max was educated and sharp, with a business degree from Santa Clara University and even a philosophy minor. Meanwhile, Jethro was written as barely literate and constantly confused. That gap became a quiet joke on the inside. The Beverly Hillbillies ran for 9 seasons, from late 1962 to March 23, 1971, and it produced 274 episodes. Max appeared in every single episode alongside Buddy Ebsen, Irene Ryan, and Donna Douglas. When it finally ended, it was not because people stopped watching. The cancellation came as part of CBS changing direction, when the network cut a bunch of rural-themed shows in what later got called the Rural Purge. The show hit the 1960s in a way that made people feel seen, even when they were laughing. A poor family strikes oil and lands in Beverly Hills, and suddenly the world of fancy manners and big money runs into simple habits and plain talk. That contrast made it easy to watch during a decade full of tension and change. Critics often hated it and called it silly or painful, but the public did not care. Inside that long run, one relationship shaped Max more than most viewers ever knew. Irene Ryan, who played Granny, was not just a co-star to him. Over those 9 years, she became the person he spent the most time around, and she became a kind of teacher that you do not forget. She was older, tougher, and trained by a world where mistakes had real consequences. She came from vaudeville and radio, and she carried that level of discipline onto the set like it was a rule of life. Irene was around 59 when she got the role in 1962, even though she played a character meant to be much older, and she did not land it by getting lucky. She fought for it. On set, she was not the soft, cuddly grandmother people imagined. She was direct, sharp, and serious. She watched camera angles and lighting. She cared about blocking, timing, and rhythm. She expected everyone else to care too. That was a shock for Max at first. He was young, confident, and still learning how a long-running show really works. And he later admitted they clashed early. They yelled at each other, argued, and bumped heads because Irene demanded precision, and Max was still finding his footing. Guest stars were said to get nervous around her, and crew members sometimes rolled their eyes at her standards. But under that hard surface, she was doing something important. She was protecting the show, and she was protecting the people in it, even when it did not look like kindness. Her way of teaching was not gentle. She did not sugarcoat. If Max rushed a reaction, she told him. If his timing slipped, she corrected him. Praise from her was rare, so even a small nod meant something, because it was earned. Over time, the friction became respect, and the respect became a strange kind of partnership. They learned each other's rhythms so well that they could adjust a scene with a glance and a small gesture. One thing Irene understood better than almost anyone was the secret behind playing a character like Jethro. She saw that Max was not dumb at all. He was acting dumb, and doing that well takes control and intelligence. She reminded him of that when the stereotype started to stick to his skin. She pushed him to treat comedy like craft, not like a joke, and she gave him one piece of advice that became a lifeline when the role started to swallow him. Never believe the character. In other words, do the work, play it fully, but do not confuse the mask with the person behind it. Max also saw something else through Irene that stayed with him. On set, if Buddy Ebsen challenged a script or pushed back, people called it leadership. When Irene did the same thing, they labeled her difficult. The behavior was similar, but the reaction was different, and Max watched that double standard play out again and again. Irene knew it too, and she still refused to shrink. Behind that toughness, there were also things Irene hid. Even while the show was a success, she carried fear, the kind of fear that comes from decades of unstable work. She did not assume safety. She showed up early. She showed up prepared. She pushed herself through demanding days, even as she got older and her body started sending warnings. Then, when the show ended in 1971, she could have stepped away and rested. Instead, she went for Broadway. She took a role in Pippin, a hard show with real physical demands, and she performed 8 times a week. She earned a Tony nomination but that final stretch turned tragic. In March 1973, she suffered a stroke during the run, and not long after, doctors found a severe brain tumor along with heart disease. She went home to California, and she died on April 26, 1973, at 70. The heartbreaking part is that accounts say she may not have been told the full truth about how terminal it was, so she held on to the belief that she would recover and return to the stage. After the Beverly Hillbillies ended, Max thought the fame would carry him into the next chapter. Instead, it slammed the door. Casting directors could not see past Jethro. He struggled to land roles, and the money got tight enough that he even considered leaving the business and selling cars. He later said that starvation was his motivation, and that line makes sense because hunger has a way of clearing the mind. When a TV reunion was planned in 1981, he refused to return as Jethro because he did not want to slide back into that image. Later, when the 1993 movie version happened, and Buddy Ebsen got a special cameo while Max did not, reports say it stung. That is the strange thing about typecasting. It can block you from work, but it can also make you feel erased when the role moves forward without you. Years passed, and the world got quieter around the old cast. By now, Max is the last surviving main cast member, and that fact alone turns him into a living archive. He has lived privately for a long time, and his story has carried both success and tragedy. Through all of it, what keeps returning is the same core truth. He was not just the guy playing the fool on TV. He was someone who learned, adapted, and survived. And when he speaks about Irene now, the tone is not nostalgia, it is respect. He credits her toughness for sharpening him, her standards for raising the bar, and her honesty for keeping him steady when the role tried to swallow him whole. The woman who had to fight for her last big chance became the person who taught him how to outlive a character. The show made them famous, but the work they did inside that show is what made them real, and that is why the story still holds together after all these years.